gosh.
All right, so, Sam, our next storyteller is Sally Evans, and I think it's important that we note that in the Moth Grand Slam that Randy and I were both in, Sally Evans beat our ass.
So we brought her here to try. No, I'm just kidding.
You get to hear her.
You can clap. It's okay. She won legitimately.
She was great.
It's okay.
Yeah.
She's amazing. That's why we wanted her here tonight.
Yeah, that's why we're so psyched to have her. And so she won that night. So part Yankee and part Kentuckian, Sally Evans is now a full-blooded old Louisvillian. I think I said that right, finally, who loves to write, to make sense of, and savor this life. She's a past winner of both the Moth Story Slam and the Moth Grand Slam, and after 10 years in the field of campus prevention education, it's like she's preventing education, that's what it sounds like, I'm sorry, at the University of Kentucky and the University of Louisville, Sally recently escaped to pursue her side hustle as a voiceover artist and hang out with her twin toddlers. Her Master's of Theological Studies and graduate work in Gender and Women's Studies helps her explore all kinds of stories related to spirituality and culture. And I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. And that is when she's not on the playground at Central Park, only running a tiny human to the bathroom. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Sally Evans.
Thank you, Dave and Randy. People call Kentucky home for lots of different reasons. When people ask me how I got to Kentucky, I say, graduate school, which is partly true. Sometimes I say it's about a relationship. What I never, ever say is that I came down here to be a part of an ex-gay ministry. Yeah. Tonight, if it's okay, I'd like to tell you that story for the first time. I want to take you back to a cold and cement-colored March morning in 2003. It was that time of year, when nature tries to remind all of us those of us who don't drink, what a hangover feels like, right? You know that day. I checked my rearview mirror and I veered my 1991 Chevrolet Lumina, affectionately known as Sweet Lou, land yacht that it was, packed with my belongings onto I-91 West heading towards Erie, Pennsylvania. My mom, who had been trailing me in the family van for the past 50 miles, finally turned off and headed toward home, convinced I was going to stay the course and not, by the way, turn back towards Rochester to visit that girlfriend. So in the passenger seat, I had those homemade blueberry muffins sitting there and a napkin, I remember, with her handwritten note that said, reminded me of their love and that her and Dad were, in fact, praying for me. You see, for the past few years, I'd been involved with an epic struggle with Jesus and homosexuality. I'd been in and out of a relationship with a woman, and by the way, I hadn't told her I was leaving town. So I was this scared, hurting 20-something heading down 71 South with just a lot of broken pieces of my life in that car. I had seen the pain that I caused my parents. I had lost a job as a youth minister at my church. I had just left someone I loved. And when I pictured God now, it was sort of just like sighing and like shaking his head, I felt utterly alone. I'm pretty sure I listened to the song Blackbird like most of the way down that trip. I was heading down, in fact, to Lexington, Kentucky. I had an aunt that lived there that could sort of initially take me in, and it was also where this ex-gay ministry was. And my parents had unearthed this through a larger organization called Exodus International, which actually doesn't exist any longer, and has since apologized for its impact on others. Yeah. But whose mantra and mission used to be proclaiming to, educating, and impacting the world with the biblical truth that freedom from homosexuality is possible when Jesus is Lord of your life. There it is, there, if you heard it, freedom. those were the terms that this issue was framed for me exclusively in. So freedom, stronghold, deliverance, struggle, fighting against these desires. And it was really this sort of growing battle feel, I think, that led me ultimately to sort of a drastic relocation ultimately. I mean, there was not room in my faith tradition for discussion or doubt around this issue. There was sin, right? Then there was homosexuality. I mean, I remember in the back of my New King James Bible, this riveting conclusion in the Q&A section, you know, when they talk about like hot button issues. And it stated, homosexuality is a sign that a culture is in the final stages of decay. And I always pictured that like needed to be said in like a Gandalf style voice, you know? Like on a precipice, like with the wind blowing, like final stages of decay. You know, you can see that, right? It's just, I mean, it was so black and white and violent and intense. And I mean, you know, as Garrison Keillor says, God is love. But, you know, he can be pretty rough on people. Just ask the Midianites. And you know, that kind of battle, people that I really trusted kind of made me feel like the unseen powers were waging war against my soul. So no pressure, y'all. But this ex-gay ministry thing better work out, right? No pressure. So I got down there and, you know, here I am. I get down there and I attended my very first meeting in a pretty normal-looking ranch home. But it was on the night of my birthday. Happy birthday. Joseph, who had transitioned from male to female about 20 years before and had since reconsidered that decision and was kind of finding his way back to a more masculine self, answered the door and looked at me. And I said, hi, I'm the girl from New York. And he actually kind of really blew me away by he was funny, he was hilarious, he was irreverent, and I think he said something like, girl, get on in here. And so I came in, and there was kind of this living room area with a circle of chairs, and I found my way. People started arriving, and I remember feeling curious but out of place. You know, even though I had chosen to see what this is all about, I certainly had reservations. I thought there'd be a lot of, like, weird people there, and, I mean, there were a few odd ones, but for the most part, interestingly, I mean, it seemed like a lot of fellow travelers sort of trying to figure things out. For example, I met Matt, who graduated from Bible college and left his job as a music minister and was here getting help. I met my friend Rachel, who is a fitness trainer from San Diego, who traveled across the country to see if change was possible. Kyle was a college student at a nearby Christian university. Christy, a young woman from Tennessee, and so on. We all were sort of desperate and were driven here to find some type of resolution between this experience of love and an experience of faith. So before I go any further, I have to tell you just a little bit about the rules, because there were rules with this experience. So first of all, you couldn't have contact with any friends or family for the first 30 days, I guess, like to kind of detox and focus and stuff. And then you couldn't have contact with people outside, members of the group outside of like activities and meetings that were sponsored by the group. So kind of lonely. And then you were also assigned this level. So, you know, 0 to 5, the whole time you were there, people had levels that corresponded with the amount of time there and sort of your behavior while you were there. You know, 5 being this and 1 being this. So there's an interesting vibe that way too. And another expectation was that you would in fact attend most of the time these Thursday night sort of support group like meetings. Now these meetings consisted of a time of worship at the beginning and then a short devotional and prayer. But then most of the time was actually just giving people space to talk. We would split up usually into these sort of male-identified, female-identified groups in separate rooms, and we would just sort of listen to each other. I heard a lot of stories. I listened as people shared what Dad yelled at them before they left. I listened as they talked about the years of trying to feel accepted and normal, about experiences of abuse, about that one song at work that makes them cry because it reminds them of their lover. I listened as they confessed thoughts of even ending it all. It was impossible not to feel the agony in that room. And we seem to do that kind of thing quite a bit where we'd split up, like I said, into the sort of guy-girl groups. I think the philosophy was if you enact the behaviors assigned to your traditional assigned gender, that maybe you were assisting the process of adjusting those misguided affections, you know? So for instance, you know, the guys might get together and toss around the football and check fluids in the car, whereas the ladies did the lady things and maybe makeover cooking, makeup cooking, that kind of thing. I mean, as you can imagine, this went over incredibly well. But I remember even one Super Bowl party, all of the women ended up in the living room watching the game. And wait for it, all the guys were in the kitchen making something to eat. Hilarious. Not too long after I got there, though, one of the more spontaneous activities that we did was actually took a road trip over here to Louisville, to the city of Louisville. So about 7 people packed into my 5-passenger Sweet Lou, and we made our way over here. And it was actually just a very memorable day. I was introduced to the best coffee shop in the world, Highland Coffee. We took band photos at the Falls of the Ohio. You know, we ate great food at Ramsey's. But the moment I remember most is the trip home. So it was dark by then. You know, we're heading back on 64. We'll drive. And for some reason, you all, we ended up singing at the top of our lungs to this ridiculous Christmas song that was on a mixed cassette tape of mine. Maybe you've heard this one. It's not quite like your song. What kind of? I sure do love those Christmas cookies, sugar. I sure do love those Christmas cookies, babe. Every time she puts a batch in the oven, there's 15 minutes for some kissing and some hugging. I sure do love your Christmas cookies, babe. Right? Christmas classic, right? Especially when sung by a bunch of queers trying not to be queer. I'm just saying. It was a moment, right? And somehow, to my surprise, in the middle of all that, it started to feel a little bit like home. I got to know this flock of odd birds, this community of random people that had migrated here from all over the country to share their secrets. You know, this tumultuous, uncertain part of our lives, we showed up for each other on these Thursday nights, and we sort of diffused and eased the heartache and questions with Saturday Night Live references or Joseph's Southern cooking or just a listening ear. Most of us had come from a place of feeling certainly undesirable, maybe even perverted. And we were kind of these living reminders for each other that we were human, you know, that we were normal for having these needs for intimacy. And we really liked each other, like really genuinely liked each other in the middle of the mess that we were going through. Now, I do want to pause and say that the container this was happening in was flawed. I want to acknowledge that ministries like these cause very real damage. When I look back now, there's destructive ideas, there's unhelpful theology. Yet, what a long time and what a winding path it can take to become the person we've always been, right? And, you know, acceptance includes stages of denial, of negotiation. And for me, acceptance wasn't this moment of blazing truth. It was more of this gradual shedding of an outer hard layer that kept me in this place of thinking, like, something is wrong with you for falling in love with women. You know, and it was this gradual sort of molting process, and the camaraderie and introspection in this group was part of that. Now, what was also part of that was eventually connecting to open, affirming churches and really studying those biblical passages for myself to understand the context they were written, and talking to other committed Christians who helped me understand, you know, this doesn't have to define you. You don't have to keep fighting. I think the Leonard Cohen quote really captures it best for me. Love is not a victory march. It's a cold and a broken hallelujah. Who knew that all the cracks in me were really the way that light was getting in? You know, I ended up leaving that ministry. I know, right? What? I didn't know it was going that way. What are you talking about? But I ended up working in a great bookstore. I stayed in Kentucky. I ended up working in a bookstore. I went to seminary. I really continued, though, along the journey of figuring this out. And it took several years, you all, but I found someone with a similar path who liked me back. And we got married under a canopy of oak leaves on a sunny Sunday afternoon. Thank you. My mom and dad were there, you all. My aunt was there. My friend Matt was there. My friend Rachel was there and read a scripture. And we all sang, "Great is thy faithfulness," to a God who's bigger than all the crap that we go through trying to find ourselves. You know, today I'm interesting to note, that guy Kyle, he's an out and proud professor of systematic theology at a respected university. My friend Matt works in human resources, married to a wonderful guy. My friend Rachel is another great storyteller, and she is a creative consultant and has written books, all kinds of great stuff. My friend Christy they just adopted this beautiful baby boy, her and her wife, and then she works as a family advocate. My friend Joseph ended up back down in his roots in Louisiana and works there. And me, I, on a daily basis, try to survive parenting 2 rabid toddlers with my wonderful and lovely wife, Paige. What I want to leave you with tonight is a statement to the fellow pilgrims, though, that I went through this with, that I told you about tonight, and to anyone who has felt spiritually homeless because of their sexuality or sexuality issues. It's a line from a poem by Jean Lohman. Let us try what it is to be true to gravity, to grace, to the given, faithful to our own voices. Let the naming powers be granted. Our words are feathers that fly on our breath. Let them go in a holy direction. Y'all, my holy direction led me here where I was supposed to be. And that, my friends, is the unexpected journey that led me to Kentucky. Thank you. Thank you, Dave and Randy. Thank you.
I need one of those, too.
Oh, thanks. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. I like you, too.
Thank you so much for the bravery of telling that story.
One more time, Sally Evans.
Yes. Oh.